Greetings, seekers of cosmic truth and travelers of the celestial tapestry. You have arrived at the Leo Karmic Throne. I invite you to breathe deeply, center your spirit, and prepare to cross the threshold into a space of profound esoteric revelation. Today we turn our gaze toward the magnificent, radiant, and often profoundly misunderstood archetype of Leo. If you carry the mark of the lion in your cosmic blueprint, whether through your sun, moon, rising, or significant planetary placements, you are currently standing on the precipice of a monumental temporal shift. The murmurs of the universe have swelled into an undeniable roar. Your 10-year karmic cycle is closing, and the era of the Great Recompense is upon you. But what does it truly mean for a karmic cycle to close? And why does this specific decade hold such transformative gravity for the children of the sun? To understand this, we must strip away the modern, oversimplified pop astrology interpretations of Leo as mere performers or attention seekers. We must plunge into the deep, primordial waters of archetypal psychology, ancient mysticism, and the philosophy of cyclical time, the spiral of time, and the 10-year epoch. In our modern consciousness, we are deeply conditioned to view time as a linear arrow shooting blindly from the past into an unknowable future. However, ancient wisdom traditions, from the Vedic seers of the East to the Hermetic philosophers of the West, understood time not as a straight line, but as a spiral. We do not simply move forward, we cycle back to similar experiential coordinates, but at higher or lower octaves of consciousness, depending on the spiritual work we have done. The 10-year cycle is a profoundly significant metric in the esoteric architecture of the universe. In Pythagorean numerology, the number 10, the decad, represents the cosmos in its entirety. It is the alpha and the omega, the return to unity, 1 plus 0 equals 1, after the arduous journey through the multifaceted experiences of the numbers 2 through 9. For you, Leo, the past 10 years have not merely been a passage of time, they have been a complete alchemical crucible. Reflect upon where you stood a decade ago. Who were you? What kingdoms were you attempting to build, and what fires were you unknowingly playing with? Over the last 10 years, you have been subjected to an intense process of what Carl Jung would call individuation, the painful but necessary journey of integrating the conscious ego with the shadowed, hidden parts of the unconscious self. You have been tested on your authenticity, your generosity, and your inherent right to sovereignty. The Sovereign's Burden, unpacking the Leo archetype. To grasp the magnitude of this great recompense, we must intimately understand the archetype of Leo. Ruled by the sun, the solitary luminary that sustains all life in our solar system, Leo represents the divine spark of creation within the human soul. In astrological symbolism, the sun does not orbit, it is orbited, it is the center. Therefore, the core psychological drive of Leo is not merely to be seen, but to radiate life, to be a localized center of gravity around which order and warmth can flourish. But here lies the profound karmic trap, the shadow that many Leos have wrestled with over the past 10 years. When the sun's energy is misaligned by ego or unhealed trauma, sovereignty devolves into tyranny, and the desire to warm others twists into an insatiable need to extract validation from them. Over the past decade, the universe has placed you in scenarios designed specifically to test your solar power. Have you encountered betrayals that forced you to question your own radiance? Have you poured your boundless energy into people, projects, or passions that left you depleted, effectively eclipsing your own sun? These were not random cruelties of a chaotic universe. And in the grand ledger of karma, a Sanskrit concept literally meaning action and its inescapable consequences, every heartbreak, every unrecognized effort, and every moment you chose to act with nobility despite being wronged was meticulously recorded. The mechanics of the Great Recompense. We are now approaching the closing of this decadal loop. The concept of recompense in this context must not be mistaken for a mere cosmic lottery win. The universe does not deal in superficial rewards. The Great Recompense is fundamentally about equilibrium. It is the hermetic principle of cause and effect expressing itself in its final, undeniable form. For the Leo who has spent the last 10 years doing the grueling shadow work, who has learned to detach their self-worth from the applause of the crowd, who has cultivated internal validation, and who has continued to love fiercely even when the world offered coldness in return. This recompense will manifest as a profound realignment of reality. It is the sudden unlocking of doors that were previously bolted shut. It is the arrival of relationships, opportunities, and material abundance that vibrate at your newfound elevated frequency. Think of the mythical phoenix, a creature deeply resonant with the fire element of Leo. The phoenix does not simply live forever. It must periodically submit itself to the flames, allowing its old, weary form to be reduced to ash so that a purified, more powerful version can be reborn. The past 10 years have been your immolation. You have been burning in the fires of your own karmic purification. Now the fire is dying down. The cycle is closing. What emerges from the ash is the sovereign, the true monarch of their own destiny, ready to receive the accumulated spiritual compound interest of a decade's worth of authentic labor. Are you prepared to drop the armor you forged in the flames, Leo? Can you conceptualize a reality where you no longer have to fight for your place in the sun because you are the sun? Welcome back, travelers of the karmic wheel. As we established, the closing of this 10-year epoch is not a passive event. It is the culmination of a profound spiritual crucible. To truly understand what you are emerging from, we must look to the stars' most ancient mirrors, mythology. In classical Greek mythos, the constellation of Leo is eternally linked to the Nemean Lion, a beast of terrifying power and divine lineage. This was no ordinary animal. The Nemean Lion possessed an impenetrable golden hide, and no mortal weapon, no sword, no spear, no arrow could pierce its skin. It terrorized the region of Nemea, hoarding its power in a dark, labyrinthine cave with 2 entrances. This brings us to the first labor of Hercules. To defeat the beast, Hercules had to block one of the cave's entrances, forcing a confrontation in the enclosed darkness. Stripped of the effectiveness of his conventional weapons, he had to grapple with the lion bare-handed, ultimately strangling it. Upon its defeat, Hercules used the lion's own razor-sharp claws to skin the beast, thereafter wearing its impenetrable pelt as his greatest armor. How does this ancient narrative map onto your lived experience over the past decade, Leo? The Nemean Lion represents the raw, untamed ego, the fierce, protective, and sometimes destructive aspects of the Leo archetype when it feels threatened. The impenetrable skin is the armor you built around your heart. Perhaps a decade ago, you erected walls of pride, stubbornness, or a desperate need for external validation to protect your vulnerable, radiant core from a world that felt hostile or indifferent. But over the last 10 years, the universe, acting as Hercules, forced you into the cave. It blocked your exits, the coping mechanisms, the mortal weapons you used to defend your ego suddenly stopped working. You were forced into a bare-handed grapple with your own shadow. You had to confront your deepest fears of inadequacy, rejection, and powerlessness. By surviving this dark night of the soul, you have done something extraordinary. You have metaphorically conquered the lower egoic lion, well, not to destroy it, but to integrate it. You are now wearing the skin of the lion, true, unshakable confidence, resilience, and spiritual sovereignty, not as a defensive wall, but as an integrated mantle of divine armor. You have transmuted pride into quiet dignity. The celestial choreography, a decade of transits. This mythological transformation was not merely psychological, it was mirrored and catalyzed by a relentless sequence of celestial transits. Let us examine the cosmic weather of the past 10 years to understand the mechanics of your karmic repayment. If we look back to the period of 2017 and 2018, the cosmos activated the Leo-Aquarius axis through a powerful series of eclipses. Eclipses are the universe's great accelerators. They are portals of fated beginnings and abrupt endings. During this time, to the North Node, the compass needle of collective destiny, was in Leo. You were called to step onto a larger stage, to find your authentic voice, but this visibility came with immense pressure. It laid the foundation for the decade's work, demanding you answer the question, who am I when no one is clapping? Following this, we entered the heavy, restrictive epoch of Saturn transiting Aquarius, directly opposing your Leo sun, or rising sign, from roughly 2020 through early 2023. Saturn is the lord of karma, the taskmaster of the zodiac. The opposition of Saturn. When Saturn opposes the sun, the luminary of vitality feels eclipsed. You may have experienced profound isolation, blockages in your creative expression, or overwhelming burdens in your partnerships. When the forging of boundaries. Saturn was testing the structural integrity of your kingdom. It stripped away superficial alliances and forced you to learn the arduous lesson of boundaries. You learned that true generosity requires discernment, that you cannot pour from an empty, cracked chalice, and as if this were not enough, we are now standing in the dawn of Pluto's monumental transit into Aquarius. Pluto, the lord of the chthonic underworld, represents total death and rebirth. Its early steps into your opposite sign are the final sweeping purges of this 10-year cycle. Pluto is ensuring that any residual karmic debt, any lingering attachments to toxic relational dynamics, power struggles, or outdated versions of yourself, are incinerated. The alchemical synthesis. Do you see the grand design, Leo? This has not been a decade of punishment. It has been a decade of alchemy. In the Hermetic tradition, the alchemical process begins with the Nigredo, the blackening, where the base material is burned and broken down. This was your confrontation in the cave. This was the Saturnian restriction. But the ultimate goal of alchemy is the rubedo, the reddening, the creation of the philosopher's stone. The Great Recompense is the arrival of your rubedo phase. Because you allowed the false ego to be stripped away, because you endured the restriction without losing your inherent warmth, the universe is now pivoting. The cosmic scales are tipping back in your favor, heavily weighted by the spiritual gold you have painstakingly refined within yourself. As we prepare to explore the exact nature of this recompense, how it will manifest in your material reality, your relationships, and your spiritual purpose, I ask you to reflect on this. What is the heaviest piece of armor you are finally ready to take off? What part of your authentic radiance have you kept hidden in the cave, waiting for it to be safe enough to shine? Welcome back to the sanctuary of the Leo Karmic Throne. We have traversed the dark labyrinth of the Nemean cave. We have witnessed the heavy, restrictive hand of Saturn and the purifying fires of your 10-year Nigredo. You stand now at the threshold of the rubedo, the reddening, the dawn. But how does this profound internal transformation cross the bridge into the tangible world. To understand the mechanics of the Great Recompense, we must invoke the second Hermetic principle enshrined in the ancient Kybalion, the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. For the past decade, your internal landscape has been a construction zone of the soul. You have been meticulously rewiring your psychological and spiritual architecture, the universe, which operates not on human morality, but on vibrational resonance, must now conform to this new structure. Reality is not a fixed stage upon which you act, it is a fluid mirror reflecting your dominant frequency. Because you have ceased demanding validation from the void and have instead become the source of your own light, the mirror of reality has no choice but to reflect that abundance back to you. The Great Recompense is not a prize handed down by a paternalistic deity. It is the unavoidable, physical manifestation of your newly established equilibrium. Let us explore exactly how this will restructure the pillars of your material and relational existence. The material recompense, the true alchemy of gold. In astrological tradition, Leo is intimately connected to the concept of gold. This is not merely an association of color, but of elemental frequency. Gold is the metal of the sun, incorruptible, radiant, and historically the ultimate standard of value. Over the past 10 years, many Leos have experienced periods of profound resource depletion. You may have invested your time, your finances, and your creative life force into projects, careers, or visions that seem to yield only dust. You planted seeds in barren soil, but this was a karmic test of your inherent sense of worth. Would you still recognize your value when the world refused to appraise you correctly? Now the karmic ledger balances. The Great Recompense in the material realm manifests as a sudden and powerful realignment of resources. It is the concept of dharma intersecting with earthly sustenance. The energy you expended without return is a debt the universe currently holds. As this cycle closes, you will witness the unblocking of financial and creative pathways. Opportunities that were previously denied to you will suddenly present themselves, not because you are fighting harder for them, but because you have stopped fighting yourself. You are shifting from a paradigm of chasing gold to being the gold. When a Leo operates from a place of sovereign self-worth, devoid of the desperate, egoic need to prove themselves, they become an inescapable magnetic center. Watch for sudden synchronicities in your career, the return of past investments, or the sudden viability of creative endeavors you had previously abandoned. The universe is returning your capital with a decade's worth of spiritual interest. Sacred unions, the end of the vampiric dynamic. Perhaps the most agonizing arena of your 10-year crucible has been the realm of human connection. Leo rules the 5th house of the zodiac, the domain of romance, self-expression, and the pure, unadulterated joy of the inner child. You are designed to love loudly, generously, and completely. However, the shadow of the unhealed Leo is the tendency to attract those who wish to warm themselves by your fire without ever adding wood to it. In the past decade, your karmic curriculum likely involved relationships where you played the savior, the entertainer, or the eternal giver. You may have been drawn into soul contracts with individuals who mirrored your own unhealed wounds, partners who were captivated by your light but secretly intimidated by it, ultimately seeking to dim you to make themselves comfortable. The Great Recompense marks the absolute termination of this vampiric dynamic. By facing your shadow and learning the Saturnian lesson of boundaries, you have altered the sacred geometry of your relationships. You are no longer transmitting the frequency of the performer desperate for an audience. Consequently, The love that enters your field now, or the elevation of an existing worthy partnership, will operate on the paradigm of the binary star system. In astrophysics, but the binary system consists of two stars orbiting a common center of mass. Neither star diminishes the other. Their gravitational dance stabilizes them both, and their combined light is infinitely brighter. You are now magnetically aligned to attract a counterpart who is equally sovereign. This is a love that does not ask you to shrink, but rather demands that you expand into your fullest radiance, ascending the throne, the embodiment of Dharma. Ultimately, the closing of this 10-year karmic cycle is about ascension. It is about taking your rightful seat upon the karmic throne. But what is the throne? It is not a chair of dominance, nor is it a position of egoic superiority over others. In the esoteric traditions of the East, true sovereignty is the embodiment of one's Dharma, one's ultimate cosmic purpose. The Leo who has survived the Nigredo and integrated the Nemean Lion does not need to rule others. They have achieved the infinitely more difficult task of ruling themselves. Your true purpose is inextricably linked to your highest joy. The universe requires the healed Leo to act as a localized sun, a beacon of warmth, creativity, and conscious leadership in a world that is often cold and fragmented. The recompense is the permission, granted not by society, but by your own soul to finally live authentically, unabashedly, and powerfully. As we absorb the profound weight of this reality shift, we must also acknowledge that transitioning into a state of immense power can trigger its own unique anxieties. Can you hold the frequency of this abundance without slipping back into the old, familiar comfort of struggle? Welcome back, these sovereigns of the zodiac, to the Leo Karmic Throne. We have spoken of the 10-year crucible, the mythological conquest of the Nemean Lion, and the impending manifestation of the Great Recompense in your material and relational spheres. However, to stop here would be a disservice to the complex reality of human psychology and the true depth of astrological evolution. We must now confront a profound paradox. Receiving the Great Recompense is often infinitely more terrifying to the human ego than enduring the karmic struggle. For the past decade, your nervous system has been fundamentally wired for battle. You have grown accustomed to the heavy armor, the hypervigilance, and the Saturnian expectation that every ounce of joy must be paid for with a pound of suffering. Struggle became your baseline frequency. So, what happens when the universe suddenly removes the resistance? What happens when the doors swing wide open and the gold is laid at your feet? Psychology refers to this as the upper limit problem, the phenomenon where we possess a hidden, internal thermostat for how much happiness, success, or love we believe we are permitted to experience. When we exceed that subconscious limit, the ego panics and orchestrates self-sabotage to pull us back down to a familiar state of discomfort. For the Leo archetype, a fixed fire sign that prides itself on strength and endurance, the sudden absence of a battle can feel like a loss of identity. The phantom limb of karma. As the Great Recompense begins to flood your reality, you will likely experience what esotericists might call the phantom limb of karma. Just as a physical body can feel pain in an arm that has been amputated, your spiritual body may continue to brace for impacts that are no longer coming. When a new, healthy, and completely non-vampiric love enters your life, your mind may frantically search for the hidden trap. When financial abundance flows without the agonizing, soul-crushing labor of the past, you may lie awake wondering when the other shoe will drop. The final test of a closing karmic cycle is not whether you can survive the darkness, but whether you can tolerate the blinding intensity of the light without shutting your eyes. It is crucial to recognize that this anxiety is not a premonition of doom. It is simply the archaic machinery of your ego attempting to process a new, elevated paradigm. The universe has forgiven your karmic debts, but you must now forgive yourself enough to accept the clean slate. Anchoring the fire. The alchemy of Earth. To successfully hold the frequency of the Great Recompense without self-sabotaging, the Leo archetype must master the elements outside of its native domain. Fire is magnificent, it illuminates, it warms, it transforms, but fire without a hearth will either burn itself out or consume the house. You need earth. In astrological terms, to stabilize the immense solar power of your fifth house, Leo's natural home of creation and joy, you must ground it into the physical realm. The recompense requires somatic anchoring. But here are the spiritual and practical disciplines required for this phase of your ascension: somatic acclimation. You must actively teach your physical body that it is safe to relax. The trauma of the past 10 years lives in the tissues. Practices like deep breathwork, grounding meditations, and physical connection to nature are no longer luxuries. They are structural necessities to expand your energetic capacity. The discipline of discernment. Abundance is inherently chaotic if unmanaged. As opportunities and connections flock to your newly elevated frequency, you must cultivate the quiet, discerning power of a true sovereign. You do not need to say yes to every invitation just because the famine is over. True power lies in what you gracefully decline. Embracing receptivity over action. Leo is an active, a masculine, yang polarity sign. You are used to doing, creating, and pushing. The Great Recompense, however, operates on the feminine, yin principle of magnetism. Your greatest task right now is simply to remain open, to hold the center, and allow the universe to serve you. The Sovereign's Declaration. As you stand on this precipice, realizing that the grueling 10-year karmic cycle is truly behind you, it is time to make a new declaration to the cosmos. You must formally revoke your vows of struggle. You are no longer the warrior fighting for scraps in the dark cave. You are the sovereign reclaiming the karmic throne. The recompense is here. It is real, it is earned, and it is yours. Welcome to the culmination of our journey at the Leo Karmic Throne. We have traversed the intricate cosmic architecture of your past decade. We have examined the mythological descent into the Nemean cave, the rigorous restrictive tutelage of Saturn, the agonizing but necessary stripping away of the ego's armor, and the impending manifestation of your material and relational recompense. As we draw this transmission to a close, we must return to the concept we introduced at the very beginning, the spiral of time. You are not simply crossing a finish line, nor are you returning to the person you were 10 years ago. That version of you has been lovingly, fundamentally outgrown. You have arrived at the same archetypal coordinates, the archetype of the sovereign, the creator, the divine child, but you are vibrating at an entirely different octave of consciousness. The Great Recompense is not the end of your story. It is the prologue to your conscious mastery, and the weight and the glory of the crown. There is a profound esoteric truth that must be acknowledged as you step into this era of ultimate repayment. True sovereignty is peaceful, but it is not passive. When you sit upon the karmic throne, you become the conscious author of your reality. The universe is no longer acting upon you through harsh, karmic lessons. It is acting through you as a co-creator. This requires a level of spiritual maturity that you have spent the last 10 years developing. The responsibility of radiance. In the past, you may have dimmed your light to make others comfortable or flared it aggressively to demand attention. Now your radiance must be steady, self-sustaining, and freely given without expectation of return. You are the sun. You warm the solar system simply by existing in your authentic state, on the custodianship of abundance. As financial, creative, and relational wealth flows into your sphere, you are called to be a wise custodian of that energy. The universe trusts you with this recompense because it knows you will no longer squander it on unhealed attachments or egoic pursuits. The grace of the open heart, the ultimate triumph over the Nemean Lion, is remaining profoundly open. It is having the strength to love, create, and trust, not because you are naive to the world's darkness, but because you are absolutely certain of your own inner light. An open horizon, the sovereign's next chapter. I will not offer you a neatly packaged, definitive conclusion, because your timeline is now fundamentally open. The heavy, fated hand of karmic restriction has lifted. The script is yours to write. As you integrate this profound energetic shift, I leave you with a few inquiries to carry into the silence of your own meditation. Who will you choose to be now that the war for your self-worth is finally over? What masterpiece will you create when you are no longer painting with the colors of survival, but with the boundless palette of joy? How will you allow yourself to be loved now that you know with absolute certainty that you are worthy of it? The 10-year cycle is closed, Leo. The Great Recompense is here. The throne is yours. Breathe deeply into this new reality. Release the phantom weight of the past and allow yourself to rise.